The moon race is heating up again, and the arguments are getting louder. One former NASA chief wants to pull Starship out of Artemis and replace it with 2 SLS rockets for every landing. At the same time, NASA has delayed another Orion rehearsal step, and SpaceX just crossed a major history-making launch milestone. So is the new proposal a serious fix, or a backward step that would slow everything down? In today's episode of Great SpaceX, we follow the money, the schedule, and the engineering reality to see what holds up and what falls apart when you look closer. A new fight over Artemis. Artemis was supposed to be the clean path back to the moon, but it has become a battleground of ideas. With NASA preparing for a leadership transition, the debate is turning into a referendum on risk, speed, and control. Former NASA Administrator Mike Griffin has been one of the loudest critics of the current plan, especially the choice to use SpaceX's Starship as the human landing system. He argues that Starship's lunar missions depend on something no one has ever done at scale, a campaign of many tanker flights, repeated dockings, and massive cryogenic propellant transfers in orbit. In his view, every extra step is another chance to fail, and the whole chain can collapse if even one part slips. Griffin often contrasts that complexity with China's approach. China is building a more Apollo-like system with fewer moving parts and clearer mission flow. Supporters of that style say it is easier to certify, easier to repeat, and easier to explain to a public that just wants to see boots on regolith. That is why Griffin keeps warning that if the United States sticks with a multi-step architecture, it could lose momentum and watch China plant the next flag. His critics, however, say he is focusing on the hardest part of Starship while ignoring what it buys if it works. A giant vehicle with room for people, cargo, and the long-term dream of a real lunar base. The dual-SLS proposal, step by step. Griffin's alternative sounds simple when you say it fast. Launch everything on NASA's own rockets, meet up near the moon, land, and come home. In his written testimony to Congress, he outlined a 2-launch plan that relies on 2 heavy SLS Block 2 flights, a Centaur upper stage used for lunar orbit insertion, Orion for the crew, and a new 2-stage lunar lander that would be designed specifically for this approach. First, an uncrewed lander stack would ride an SLS cargo variant toward the moon. The upper stage would then push that lander into low lunar orbit to wait. Later, a second SLS would send the astronauts in Orion on a matching path, using another upper stage to enter low lunar orbit. Orion would rendezvous, the crew would transfer into the lander, and 2 astronauts would descend to the surface, while the rest of the system stayed in orbit. After the surface mission, the ascent stage would lift off, rendezvous with Orion, and the crew would transfer again for the trip home. This plan removes Starship and also sidelines other commercial launches. It puts NASA back in the driver's seat, with a mission rhythm that feels familiar to anyone who grew up on Apollo documentaries. And Griffin pairs it with a broader message. He believes early missions should prioritize timeliness and crew safety. And he argues that architectures built on repeated propellant transfer operations can struggle to hit a tight schedule window. In other words, he is not just criticizing Starship. He is proposing an entire reset of how the United States attempts a crewed lunar return. Why critics call it unrealistic? Here is the catch. Artemis did not move towards commercial systems because NASA forgot how to build rockets. It moved that way because the traditional all-government path was becoming too expensive to sustain. Even one SLS launch is costly, and NASA's Inspector General has warned that the production and operations costs for the early SLS and Orion missions run into the billions of dollars per flight. Now imagine doubling the biggest cost driver on the manifest. 2 SLS rockets per landing means twice the core stages, twice the boosters, more engines, more integration work, and more schedule pressure on an already stretched industrial base. Then come the ground systems. SLS needs a large, complex launch infrastructure, including mobile launchers. Building one has been a major budget item on its own. Building and maintaining 2 in parallel adds another layer of long-term expense that Congress would need to defend every year. And the lander is not a free add-on. A two-stage lunar lander sized to match SLS performance would still be a brand new program with its own test campaign, failure risk, and learning curve. And then there is the question of who even builds the lander. Blue Origin's Blue Origin Blue Moon is being developed to fly on New Glenn, not on SLS. In a dual-SLS world, either that lander would need a major redesign, or NASA would need to fund a different lander optimized for SLS dimensions and loads. Either option means new contracts, new tests, and more waiting, right when the clock is already tight. Finally, the calendar is unforgiving. Artemis 3 is already lined up for later in the decade. Restarting the architecture at this point would not just add cost, it would almost guarantee more years of delay, which is the very outcome Griffin says he wants to avoid. So the proposal leaves people asking a blunt question. If the goal is to beat China soon, how does a fresh vehicle, a fresh lander, and a fresh launch stack get certified faster than the hardware already in work? That is why many observers see the dual-SLS concept as a debate starter, not a realistic near-term replacement. Orion's rehearsal delay adds pressure. While the architecture fight plays out on paper, the current Artemis hardware is still wrestling with real-world details. NASA planned a countdown demonstration test for the Artemis 2 crew, a full launch day style rehearsal where the astronauts suit up, head to the vehicle assembly building, climb the crew access arm, strap into Orion, and then practice the final hours of the countdown and an emergency escape drill. Commander Reed Wiseman said the team pushed that test into December, turning what should have been a packed week at Kennedy Space Center into time back at Johnson Space Center to work through open questions. NASA later confirmed a specific trigger for the delay. Before the countdown rehearsal, teams were running a launch closeout demonstration. That rehearsal paused when workers found a blemish on the crew module's thermal barrier that kept the hatch from closing. A repair was completed on November 18th, and the closeout work was finished on November 19th. NASA then chose to proceed with water servicing next, and move the countdown demonstration test to a later date, so the closeout lessons could be folded into the plan. The agency did not give an exact new day for the rehearsal, but it emphasized that Artemis 2 remains targeted for no later than April 2026, with opportunities as soon as February. None of this means Orion is doomed, but it does show how sensitive the system is. A small issue on a thermal barrier can ripple into schedule changes, training reshuffles, and a new sequencing of ground operations. And every time that happens, it fuels the wider argument about sustainability. If Artemis is already this demanding before the first crewed flight, how hard will it be to fly again and again on a steady cadence? SpaceX crosses 600 and keeps pushing. Now contrast that with SpaceX's current tempo. On December 4th, Falcon 9 lifted off from Space Launch Complex 4 East at Vandenberg Space Force Base, carrying 28 Starlink satellites. The mission was routine in the best way: clean ascent, on-time deployment, and a successful landing of booster B-1097 on the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You spaceflight. Now noted that landing marked the 544th booster landing for SpaceX, and the flight was the company's 114th Starlink launch of the year. Those numbers matter because reliability at scale is what turns big promises into normal operations. That same pace is what pushed SpaceX past a symbolic line. With Falcon 9 launches stacking up through December, SpaceX has now exceeded 600 missions overall, a milestone that would have sounded impossible when the company was still struggling with Falcon 1. And the cadence is still rising. By mid-December, SpaceX had already logged more than 160 Falcon 9 flights in 2025, plus additional missions with other vehicles. Even if some launches slip, the company is still positioned to close the year with one of the highest launch totals in history. Here is the bigger point for Artemis. Starship is not being built in a vacuum. It is being built inside a company that has learned how to turn rockets into a repeatable product. That does not make orbital refueling easy, and it does not erase Starship's remaining hurdles, but it does explain why NASA bet on it. If Starship can mature into a stable system, it unlocks not just a landing, but cargo-heavy missions, larger crews, and the kind of lunar infrastructure that no Apollo-style lander can deliver. Artemis is being pulled in two directions at once. One side wants a NASA-owned architecture, even if it means building hardware and paying for two SLS rockets, each landing. The other side wants to finish what is underway, prove orbital refueling, and use Starship's scale to make the moon more than a photo op. Meanwhile, Orion's hiccups remind us how fragile schedules can be, and SpaceX's launch cadence shows what iteration looks like. This has been Kevin. Now it's your turn. Do you think Starship stays central, or should NASA reset? Comment, keep progressing, and subscribe for the next update.